Hollow County doesn't care why you came. It only cares that you crossed the line. 4 people took a wrong turn into Hollow County. Each had their own reason for being on that road, and each was told to turn around. None of them listened. Welcome to Echoes in the Dark. Dale Rourke drove nights because nights paid better and because his ex-wife had the house until the paperwork cleared, and a man can only sit in a rented room so many hours before the walls start talking back. 6 years of rideshare. He knew every county road inside 40 miles of Ash Fork, the way he knew the gap in his own teeth, without thinking, by feel. The fare pinged at 1:40 in the morning. A pickup out past the fairgrounds, a drop in Ash Fork proper. 9 minutes, the app said. Passenger name, a single initial, M. She was waiting under the one working light in the fairground lot, a duffel bag at her feet, and she got in the back without a word and pulled the door shut soft, the way tired people do. Young. Hood up. She smelled like wood smoke and something under it, Swedish, that Dale didn't have a name for and didn't try to find one. Ash Fork, he said to confirm. Get you home in a few...
If you can, she said.
He almost asked what that meant. He'd think about that later. The later he had, which wasn't much. That she'd handed him the whole thing right there in 3 words, and he'd let it go by because it was late and he wanted the fair closed. He pulled onto the state road, empty, good time, no traffic, the kind of run that made nights worth it. And a mile on, where the state road bent toward town, there was a sign in the middle of his lane that had no business being there. Detour. Orange, reflective, fresh. An arrow pointing right onto Old Ridge Road. Dale slowed. He knew Old Ridge Road. It ran the long way around the low ground and came back to the state road 4 miles on. And there was no reason on earth to close the straight stretch. No water over it, no work he'd heard of, and he heard about everything, drivers talk. But there was a flagger standing past the sign in a reflective vest, holding a sign paddle, and the paddle said, slow, and he was waving Dale right, onto the Ridge Road, unhurried, patient, like he had all night. They got the state road closed, Dale said, half to himself. First I heard of it. In the mirror, the girl had turned to look out the back window, at the sign, at the flagger, and she'd gone very still.
Please don't, she said.
Ma'am, I got to. Road's closed. He was already turning. 6 years of doing what the sign said. It's 4 minutes the long way. I'll still have you home. She didn't answer. When he glanced back, she'd slid down in the seat with her hood pulled forward and her hands pressed flat together between her knees. And Dale drove onto Old Ridge Road, thinking she was just a scared kid, out too late, riding home to somewhere she didn't want to be. The Ridge Road was worse than he remembered. The trees came in close on both sides, big old sycamores, pale trunks flaring up out of the dark past his headlights. And the black top was patched and humped so the car rocked on its springs. No streetlights out here. No houses. Just the tunnel his beams cut and the pale trees sliding by. He drove maybe a mile before he passed the car. It was a sedan, older, pulled half onto the shoulder with its hazards going. Tick, 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 orange in the dark. A man stood at the open driver's door, looking down at something. Dale slowed on reflex, the way you do, and the man didn't look up, and Dale drove on because a car with its hazards on is not an emergency, and he had a fare in the back. Somebody broke down, he said, filling the quiet. The girl didn't answer. The road bent, straightened, and a mile on there was the car again. Same sedan, same shoulder, same hazards. Tick, tick, tick. Same man standing at the open door, looking down. Dale's foot came off the gas without him deciding it. The hell, he said softly. Because Old Ridge Road did not loop. He'd driven it 100 times. It ran one way, low ground on the left, ridge on the right. And it did not bring you back past the same broke-down car twice. He looked closer this time, slowing as he came level. The man at the car door was older, gray, in a windbreaker. He was looking down at the driver's seat like there was something in it, and as Dale's headlights swept across him, the man's head came up, slow, too slow, and turned to follow the car, and his face was wrong in a way Dale couldn't hold on to. Blurred, like a face seen through water, and Dale looked back at the road and pressed the gas and did not slow down again.
Okay,
Dale said. His voice had gone thin. Okay, I'm gonna get us back to the state road. You can't turn around, the girl said from the back, quiet, certain. It doesn't let you turn around. It just makes the road longer. He looked in the mirror. She was sitting up now, hood back, and she was younger than he'd thought, and older than she should have been, both at once. And she was looking at the back of his head with something that wasn't fear. It was closer to sorrow. There's a stalled car, she said, and every time you pass it, there's less of him left. You've seen it twice. You'll see it again. When you can see through him, you're close. Lady, I don't know what you're... I told you not to turn, she said. I told you if you could just keep going straight on the state road, we'd have been fine. But you did what the sign said. She said it gently, and that was the worst part. Everybody does what the sign said. That's how it eats. Dale's mouth was dry. Up ahead, the trees opened for a heartbeat, and he saw the low ground off to the left. A wide black flat, no water in it, dry mud cracked pale in his headlights. And standing out in the middle of that dry flat, far off, was the flagger. The same one. Vest catching his lights across a quarter-mile of open ground, holding the paddle up. Slow. Dale drove faster. The third time he passed the car, he could see the trees through the standing man. The sedan's hazards ticked. The shape of the door was a smear of gray in the dark, thinning at the edges, and it did not lift its head this time, because it no longer entirely had one. Dale did not slow. His hands were locked on the wheel, and his heart was going so hard he could feel it in his teeth. How do I get out? He said. Tell me how I get out. The girl was quiet for a moment. You don't, she said. I took the turn a long time ago, and I'm still on it. She said it flat, worn smooth, a thing repeated past all feeling. It doesn't kill you. That's the part nobody understands. It just keeps the road going until you stop trying. And then you're the car on the shoulder, and then you're the man at the door, and then you're the thing in the field that waves the next one in. The road ended. It did not curve, did not fork, did not run out into the state road 4 miles on the way it was supposed to. It simply stopped. The blacktop crumbling into that dry, cracked flat, the pale sycamores standing back in a ring around the open ground, and in the center of the flat, where the road pointed him, the flagger. Dale stood on the brake. The car slewed and stopped in a spray of grit maybe 40 feet out, headlights full on the man. Except it was not a man, and up close, lit, there was no water to blur it, and Dale saw all of it. It wore the shape of a man the way a coat wears a hook. The reflective vest hung off something that was too tall and too narrow and jointed wrong. Arms that came down past where a man's would stop, and the paddle it held, slow, still, patient, was gripped in a hand of pale gray fingers with too many knuckles in each one. Its head was smooth and long, and it had no face, only a seam where a face would open. And as Dale watched, frozen, both hands on the wheel and the engine running, that seam came open. It opened top to bottom, and it kept opening, past where the head should end, down into the vest, a red, wet dark going all the way down. And the smell rolled across the dry ground and into the car. Wood smoke and that sweetness underneath, the smell that had been on the girl the whole time, the smell of the road, the smell of everyone still on it. It didn't rush him. It didn't have to. It stood in its dry field with its face come open, and it waited, because waiting was the only thing it had ever needed to do. It had made the road long and looped him past what was left of the others to wear him down to the place every driver came to in the end, the place where you stop fighting, where you decide the road wins, where you do the small, sensible thing to make it easier. And the small, sensible thing, the thing the road had been pressing into the back of his mind since the second time he passed that car, was this. The car goes faster with less weight in it. Put the girl out. Lighten the load. Drive home.
Don't,
The girl whispered. Not pleading, just tired. That's not you thinking that. It puts it in you. Everyone who's ever driven this road has felt sure, right at the end, that they'd get out if they just weren't carrying anybody. Her voice cracked, the first crack in it. The ones who put me out didn't get out. They just stopped being able to hear me. Behind him, very soft, his own thumb found the door lock. He'd put his hand there without knowing. One press, and the back door opens, and the girl goes out onto the dry ground where the thing is waiting. And Dale Rourke's car is lighter by one. And some animal part of him was certain. Certain the way you're certain of a thing you've been told your whole life. That the road would let him go if he did. Somebody always says yes. Dale took his thumb off the lock. He put the car in reverse, and he floored it. You can't turn around. She'd told him that the road only gets longer. But she hadn't said you couldn't go backward down it. And so that's what he did. Engine screaming, transmission howling, headlights swinging off the thing in the field as he threw the wheel, and the car lurched back down the crumbling blacktop the way he'd come. Rear first into the dark, the pale trees flashing past in reverse. He passed the stalled car going backward. The gray smear at the door. The ticking hazards. He passed it and kept the pedal down and watched the odometer and did not look for the flagger in the low ground. And for a while, a mile, two, he let himself believe he was climbing back up out of it. Then the mile markers started coming again from the wrong direction, and he understood that backward was just another way of going straight, and the road was still getting longer, and he was still on it. He pulled onto the shoulder and stopped. His hands wouldn't hold the wheels steady enough to drive, and there was no point anyway. The road didn't end. It only got longer. He put the hazards on. Tick, tick, tick. Company of a kind. The girl was gone from the back seat. She'd gotten out a while back, on her own, at the Sycamores where the road bends. Because he wouldn't put her out, so she'd spared him the choice of carrying her. Before she went, she'd said thank you, and that she was sorry, and that it wasn't going to help him, but he should know it mattered. That he was the first one in a long time who took his thumb off the lock. Everybody says yes in the end, she'd told him. This time, nobody did. The smell was coming back. Wood smoke, and that sweetness underneath, which meant it was close, which meant she'd been right about that too. When you can smell it, you're close. Up ahead on the shoulder, there was a car, older sedan, hazards going. A man standing at the open door, looking down at the driver's seat. And even from here, even in the dark, Dale could see the pale trees standing right through him. The man at the car up ahead lifted his head. They found Dale Rourke's car 3 days later on the straight stretch of the state road. Engine cold, phone dead on the passenger seat. No sign of a passenger, and the fare in the app had closed itself out at 1:49 in the morning. 9 minutes after pickup, marked complete. No sign of Dale has ever been found. 2 years is a long time to keep moving, but Renata Vance had gotten good at it. She drove nights, took contract work in towns she'd never see twice, paid cash where she could, and did not keep a calendar, because a calendar is a way of admitting there are days you'll have to live through in order. She had a story ready for anyone who asked why a woman her age was always passing through and never staying. And the story was mostly true, which is the best kind. She left out the part that mattered. Everyone leaves out the part that matters. The part Renata left out was a boy named Kyle Osterhout and a 2-lane road outside Beckley on a wet March night 2 years back, and the sound a car makes when it doesn't stop the way it should. She left out that she'd been the one driving. She left out worse than that. She hadn't been drunk, hadn't been tired, hadn't had a single thing wrong with her that night except the phone in her right hand. A text from a man she'd stopped seeing a week later. She'd looked down to answer it. 3 words, on my way. She never even sent them. And when she looked up, the road had a boy in it, and then it didn't. And then it had a shape behind her that wasn't moving. She left out that she'd slowed and looked in the mirror and decided in about 4 seconds that her future was worth more than his life, and driven on. They never found who did it. She'd made sure of that. She'd washed the car at a self-serve in the dark and thrown the phone in a river and sold the car 3 states away and started moving, and had not stopped moving since, because as long as she was moving, it stayed behind her, a thing in a mirror, not gaining. The job that night was in a town past Marrow she'd never heard of, and the GPS took her off the interstate onto a state road that narrowed and darkened and ran toward the Hollow County line through country with no lights in it. Her tank was near empty. She'd meant to fill up an hour back and hadn't, because stopping was the thing she was worst at. The station rose up out of the dark like the last lit thing in the world. 2 pumps under a sagging canopy, a cinder block building with 1 window glowing. She pulled in on fumes and was grateful, and that was the last easy moment she had. The man behind the counter was old the way fence posts are old, weathered past guessing, still standing. He watched her come in and he didn't smile so much as soften. And he said the pumps only took cash after dark. The card reader was down, had been down a long while. Renata had cash. She counted it onto the counter and he made no move to ring it. "You headed on through," he said, not a question. "Past the line. Town on the other side. Work in the morning." He nodded slowly, like she'd confirmed something he'd been sorry to suspect. "There's coffee," he said. "Fresh. And a bench out of the wind. You'd be smarter to wait for light. Roads past the line don't run the way the map says after dark. A lot of folks find that out. I've driven worse than dark. I don't doubt it." He looked at her then, really looked, the way almost nobody had in 2 years, and Renata felt the old animal urge to be already gone. "Ma'am, I'll say it plain, because I don't get to say much. Most roads take you where you're going. This one takes you back to what you're running from. You cross that line tonight and it'll be waiting, and it has been waiting, and it does not care that you're tired. Sit down, drink the coffee, let the sun come up. Whatever's behind you can wait 1 more night. It's waited 2 years. It can wait till morning." The floor seemed to drop an inch under her. She had never told anyone. Not one soul, not once, in 2 years. There was no way for a man in a cinder block station on a county road to know how long it had been. 2 years. He'd said 2 years. "I don't know what you think you—" "I don't think anything," he said, gentle, almost grieved. "I just work the door. I can see what's coming for a person by the way it leans on them when they walk in. Yours has been leaning a long time, that's all. I'd hold it off you 1 more night if you'd let me." He nudged the coffee an inch toward her. "Sit down, Renata." She had not given him her name. Renata took her cash off the counter, and her hands were not steady, and she said something she didn't remember afterward. Something dismissive, something to make the floor stop dropping. And she went out to the pumps and filled the tank herself in the cold, and the whole time the 1 lit window watched her, and behind it the old man stood without moving, and did not try to stop her, because stopping her was not a thing he was allowed to do. The last thing she saw in the mirror pulling out was the man come to the door and stand in the light of it, watching her go, the way you watch something you couldn't save. The county line was not marked, but she felt it. The car crossed some seam in the dark, and the radio, which had been on low, filled all at once with a sound that was not a station. A wet, patient, dragging sound, close, like something breathing right at the back of her neck, and then cut to silence so total she could hear her own blood. The road ahead, in her headlights, was wrong. The trees leaned in, and in the mirror, where for 2 years there had been only empty road behind her, there was a shape. It was far back at first, a darker dark, low to the ground, in the center of the lane, not moving the way a person moves. She told herself deer, told herself shadow, and pressed the gas, and looked again, and it was closer. Not running. It didn't need to run. Every time the road bent and her mirror cleared and filled again, it had closed the distance, the way it had never once closed it in 2 years of her moving, because for 2 years she'd been outrunning it, and now she was inside the place where it lived, and it did not have to chase her here. It only had to arrive. She did not look directly at it. Some deep part of her understood that looking was the thing you did not do. She drove, and it gained, and the cold came into the car though the heater roared, and the smell reached her. Not wood smoke, nothing like the road behind her, but wet asphalt and rain, and, under it, the specific copper smell of that night outside Beckley, the smell she had spent 2 years and a great deal of money never smelling again. It had brought the night with it. It was the night. It had been the night the whole time, waiting at the one place she'd be dumb enough, or tired enough, or fated enough to cross into. And then, in the black of the back seat, a light came on. A small blue-white glow, low, the exact shape and color of a phone screen waking in the dark. The light she had looked down into on a wet road 2 years ago. The last thing her eyes were doing when they should have been on the boy. She knew that light in her spine. It had killed him, and it had never stopped glowing, not really, not once in 2 years. And now it was here, in her back seat, lighting something up from below, and every discipline she had, every rule she'd made about not looking, went out of her like breath. Because you look at the phone. That's the whole lesson of her life. When the light comes on in the dark, you look down at it, even when you know, especially when you know, that the road has something in it. The shape reached the back bumper. She felt the car settle, as if weight had come onto it. And in the glow of that little screen, filling the mirror now, close enough to touch the glass, was Kyle Osterhout as she had left him. And she made the mistake, the one mistake. She turned her head and looked straight into the back seat, where the cold was coldest and the blue light was brightest. She never told anyone what was there. She could not make the words. Whatever wears the shape of the thing you did, it does not wear it kindly. And it had been 2 years growing into the shape, and it was very close. And it was looking back at her with a patience that was worse than any rage. Renata screamed and wrenched the wheel. The car went off the road at speed and into the trees, and the world came apart in glass and noise. And then there was nothing for a while. She woke in daylight. That was the first mercy, and the only one. Daylight, gray and ordinary, coming through a broken windshield, and birdsong and the tick of a cooling engine. The back seat was empty. The cold was gone. The smell was gone. Whatever had filled the mirror had not followed the sunrise, the way the old man had promised it wouldn't, if only she'd waited for it. She had not waited, and the road had taken what it came for. She got out of the wreck and she could walk, which she would later understand was not the point. The point was what she could no longer do. Because from that morning on, Renata Vance could not sleep in the dark. Not wouldn't, couldn't. The moment the light went out, it was there again, at the edge of the mirror of her, low to the ground, in the center of the lane, closing the distance it had closed that night. 2 years she'd kept it behind her by moving. Now it lived behind her eyelids, and the only thing that held it back was light, and a person cannot keep the light on forever, and a person cannot go without sleep forever, and so she has learned to sleep in pieces, in the day, in rooms full of lamps, with something always on. That's the part she can't explain to anyone, the part that makes the doctors write their careful words. She needs the light to keep it away, and every light in a dark room is a small blue glow at the edge of her vision. A screen waking up, a thing to look down into. So the same light that holds the boy back is the light that puts her right back on that wet road, with her eyes coming off the road. Forever, every night, both at once. The road knew exactly what to leave her with. It always does. She could have had one more night of peace. The old man had offered it across a cash register, with fresh coffee, for free. She could have sat on the bench and let the sun come up, and driven on rested, into a morning where the roads ran the way the maps said. She has thought about going back. She never will. Most roads take you where you're going, the old man said. That one takes you back to what you're running from. And the thing about what you're running from is that once it catches you, it doesn't leave. It just stops chasing. It doesn't have to chase you anymore. It's already in the back seat. Wade Kessler ran a wrecker for Hollow County Towing, and the good thing about the job, the only good thing some nights, was that it made a man useful to strangers in the worst hour of their day. 6 years of winch cable and flat tires and drunks in ditches. He knew every road in the county by the feel of it through the truck seat, and he knew Route 9, the road out, best of all, because Route 9 was the way home. The call came in past midnight. A car off the shoulder near the county line. Driver stranded, no injuries. Routine. He took the truck out under a sky with no moon in it and found her about a mile shy of the Sycamores. A woman, standing beside a sedan, nosed into the ditch, small, still, waiting, with her hands folded in front of her the way you'd wait for a bus. She was calm. That was the first thing, and later he'd understand it was the only warning he got. People who've just put a car in a ditch are rattled, embarrassed, cold, talkative. This woman was none of those. She thanked him evenly and watched him hook the sedan with a patience that had no bottom to it. And when he opened the passenger door of the wrecker for her, she got in without a word and folded her hands again and looked straight ahead down the road. "Where are you headed?" Wade asked, pulling out. "Just to the trees," she said. "The old Sycamores, where the road crosses the line. You can let me out there. Someone's meeting me." Odd place to be met, past midnight, on foot. But Wade had stopped being surprised by people's arrangements a long time ago, and the Sycamores were on his way home. And so he drove, and did not think anything of it. And that was the last stretch of road he would ever drive without thinking of it. She was easy to forget, at first. She sat still and answered short, and Wade filled the quiet with the radio and the road. But the closer they got to the county line, the less he could forget her, because she was changing. Not her face, not anything he could point to, but the feel of her, the way the air changes before weather. She'd stopped looking straight ahead. She was looking at the trees now, leaning toward the windshield, and as the first of the old Sycamores came up pale in his headlights, she made a sound. Low, hungry, wrong. A sound no part of a person should make. And Wade's skin went to goose flesh from his scalp to his heels. "You okay over there?" His voice came out thin. "Almost," she said. "Almost, almost." And she smiled, and it was too wide, and it did not stop where a smile stops. He should have hit the brakes and put her out right there. He'd tell himself that for the rest of his life. But the trees were coming up close on both sides now, the pale trunks flashing past, and she was staring at them with that ended smile, and her hands had come unfolded and were pressed flat to the dash. And Wade saw, he'd swear it sober to anyone, that where her palms touched the dash, the plastic was greasing over with frost. The wrecker rolled into the stand of Sycamores, and she stopped it. She didn't touch the wheel, she didn't touch the pedals. The engine simply died, and the truck coasted to a stop, dead center in the trees, headlights on the pale trunks. And in the sudden engine-off silence, Wade could hear her breathing, fast and shallow and glad. And he could hear something else under it, a creak, a strain, the sound of the old Sycamores leaning, though there was no wind, the whole stand of them bowing in around the truck like ribs closing. "This is as far as I go," the woman said. Her voice had changed. It came from too low in her, and there was a second sound folded inside it, further back. "There's a line here. You can't see it. I can't cross it. Not on my own. Not in 100 years of trying. And I have tried." She turned to him, and her eyes had gone entirely to dark, corner to corner, no white left. "But you can walk across it like it isn't there, because for you, it isn't. All you have to do is carry something over for me, just to the far side, just past the line. That's all. Carry it across and set it down, and you'll drive home and sleep like a child." And she opened her hands, which had been empty, and they were not empty now. Wade did not look at what was in her hands. Some animal older than his fear knew that to see the thing fully was to be halfway to carrying it. He looked at her instead, which was nearly as bad because she had stopped bothering. The woman was gone. What sat in his passenger seat had used her up like a glove worn through at the fingers. The skin of her had gone slack and gray and wrong over something too large for it, a shape that strained at the shoulders and the jaw, and the too wide smile had torn at one corner without bleeding, and behind the split he saw not teeth and not a mouth, but a dark that went back and back, packed with a slow movement like the inside of a hive. It had no more use for the woman's face, and it was shrugging out of it by degrees, and the smell that came off it was cold and mineral, wet stone, deep ground, a smell from under things. And it held its cupped hands out across the seat, patient, offering, and in them was the something it needed carried, and the trees groaned and leaned and could not reach across the last few feet of cab to make him take it, because the trees held it out, but they could not make a living man say yes. That was the whole of it, Wade understood. The entire trap. It could not cross. It could wear a stranded woman a mile up the road and ride to the very edge of the line, but the line held it, had held it longer than anyone alive, some boundary drawn through the dark that it could feel and could not pass. And the only door left in that wall was a living hand, willing to reach across and carry it through. It had gotten in the truck for that. It had been calm in the ditch for that. "Take it," it said, with the woman's ruined mouth and the second voice behind. "Carry it across. Or sit here with me until the sun, and the sun is a long way off, and I am not patient with people who make me wait." Every muscle in Wade Kessler wanted to obey, not because he was weak, because the thing pressed want into the cab the way heat presses off a stove, a certainty that reaching out and taking the small, cold weight was the reasonable thing, the only way home. And his hand actually rose off his knee toward it, an inch, 2. He grabbed the door handle instead, and he threw himself out of the truck. He hit the road on his shoulder and he ran, not to the far side, not across the line, but back up Route 9 the way he'd come, into the county, away from the last tree, because the far side was the one place it wanted him, and he had just enough left in him to want the opposite. Behind him, the sycamores screamed. That was the only word he ever had for it, a sound of straining wood at a pitch that shouldn't come from trees. And then the sound cut off all at once, and the night went dead quiet. And Wade ran until the quiet made him look back. The truck sat dark and empty in the stand of trees, both doors open, nothing in the passenger seat, nothing on the road. The sycamores stood still and pale as they had stood for 100 years, marking the line as they always had, holding shut a door he had almost walked through. He walked back to town. It took him 3 hours, and he did not once cut through the trees. They found the sedan he'd been towing still hooked to the wrecker, registered to a woman who'd been reported missing 11 days before, 70 miles away. She was never found. Wade told the deputies most of it, the parts that could be said, and they wrote down possible impairment and let him go. And he did not argue, because there is no line on a report for the truth of that night. Wade Kessler still runs a wrecker in Hollow County. He'll take any call, any road, any hour. But he will not take Route 9 out past the Sycamores after dark. Not for double, not for triple, not to get home to his own bed. And when a stranded call comes in from near the county line at night, he sits a minute in the cab with his hands on the wheel before he answers it, and he thinks about how calm she was, standing in the dark with her hands folded, waiting. Because it's still there. He knows that the way he knows the road through the seat. The line holds. It's held a long time. But a line only stops the thing itself. It was never meant to stop a living hand from reaching across, and every night, it waits by that boundary for a stranded traveler and a kind man with a winch. And someday, it will get one who looks at what's in its hands and reaches out and carries it across. It only needs the once. For 8 months, Cole Berard did the things you do when the police have stopped returning your calls. He made the flyers. He ran the tip line that rang 4 times a week with nothing. He drove the route his sister Lily had driven the night she vanished, over and over, until he knew it the way he knew the inside of his own grief. The interstate, the exit, the 2-lane that ran down into the hills toward a county he'd never had a reason to visit before she disappeared into it. Hollow County. A name that meant nothing to him in March and meant everything by November. Lily had been a freelance writer, the kind who chased strange local stories that never quite paid. Haunted mills, vanished towns, roadside legends. Cole had teased her about it. Somebody's got to keep the Bigfoot economy alive, he'd say, and she'd laugh and tell him the real stories were never the monsters. They were the people who believed in them. Her last piece, the one she'd been chasing when she went quiet, was about a road. He had her notes. The police had photographed them and handed the notebook back like it was nothing, because to them, it was. Cole had read it so many times the cover had gone soft. Most of it was ordinary reporting. Interviews, dates, a gas receipt tucked in the spine. But the last 4 pages were about a road the locals called the Ash Fork Road, or sometimes just the Old Road. And the thing about the Ash Fork Road, Lily had written, in the tight, excited hand she used when a story was getting good, was that it wasn't on any map. Not the county maps, not the survey maps, not the satellite. People in the hollows knew it. People drove it. It went somewhere, and officially, it did not exist. Everyone I ask about it, she'd written on the last page, tells me the same thing before they'll say anything else. They say, don't go looking for it after dark, because after dark, it's easier to find. I asked what that meant, and an old man at the county line station just looked at me and said, it means the road wants finding, and a road that wants finding is a road you want to stay off of. I'm going tonight. That was the last thing Lily Berard ever wrote. The police worked the ordinary theories. She'd run off. She'd driven into a river. She'd met the wrong person at a gas station. They dragged the water they could drag and ran her plates, and after a while, they filed her the way they file people, in a drawer that stays closed. Nobody worked the road, because the road wasn't real, and you can't search a road that isn't on the map. Cole could. Cole had 8 months of nothing in a soft-covered notebook, and a sister who'd written, I'm going tonight, in her happy handwriting. So on a cold, clear evening in November, he filled his tank, and he drove down the 2-lane into Hollow County, and he went looking for the Ash Fork Road after dark. Because Lily had. And because if it was easier to find after dark, then after dark was when he'd find it. He told himself he just wanted to see where she'd been. He knew that was a lie before he was 10 miles in. He wasn't going to see where she'd been. He was going to bring her home, one way or the other, and some part of him had known for a while that the or the other had grown as big as the first half, and he'd stopped being afraid of it. That was the dangerous thing, though he didn't know it yet. The road is patient with the frightened. It has trouble with a man who has already made his peace with the worst, because a man like that will keep walking toward it. He started where Lily started, at the last gas station before the Hollow County line. The one from her notes, the one with the old man. It was still there, lights on, a single window glowing against the dark. Cole went in with Lily's photo already in his hand. The man behind the counter was old the way the hills were old, and he looked at the photo for a long time before he looked at Cole, and something moved behind his face that wasn't surprise. Recognition, maybe. Or the absence of it. The careful blankness of a man deciding not to know something. She was here, Cole said, 8 months ago. She was asking about the Ash Fork Road. A lot of people ask. The old man's voice was gentle and gave away nothing. Most of them I talk out of it. Some I can't. Could you talk her out of it? The old man set the photo down on the counter, face up, and did not answer that. You've got her look, he said instead, around the eyes. She had a way of not hearing the word no. You've got it worse, I think, because you've got a reason. He leaned back. Son, I'll tell you what I told her, and you'll do what she did with it, which is nothing. The Ash Fork Road takes people. It's been taking them longer than this county's had a name. It doesn't take them the way a river takes them, or a bad man takes them. It keeps them. And once it's got somebody, the only thing worse than never finding the road is finding it. Because it'll take me, too. No. The old man looked at him with something close to pity. Because it'll let you leave. That's the part nobody's ready for. It'll let you leave, and it'll let you take something with you, and you'll spend the rest of your life not sure what you brought home. He slid the photo back across the counter. Wait for morning. Whatever's out there, it's been out there 8 months. It'll keep till the sun's up. Lily's notes had a line about that. After dark, it's easier to find. Cole took the photo and thanked the man, and did not wait for morning. And the old man didn't try to stop him, because stopping him was not a thing he was able to do. He only came to the door and stood in the light of it and watched Cole pull out, the way you watch someone walk into weather. Lily's notes gave a mile marker, a stretch of the state road past the county line where, she'd written, a local told her the Ash Fork Road comes and goes. Cole found the marker. There was no road there, just the state road running on into the dark, and the tree line close on both sides, unbroken. He drove past it, turned around a mile on, drove back. Nothing. He did this 3 times, and the 3rd time, coming back the way he'd first come, there was a road. It opened off the state road to the right where there had been only trees, a gap in the tree line with a dirt and gravel road running back into the dark, and at the mouth of it, a signpost so old the sign itself was gone, just a bare, weathered post standing where a name used to be. Cole sat at the mouth of the road with his engine running and his heart going hard, because he had driven this exact stretch 3 times in the last 10 minutes, and the road had not been there, and now it was. And that meant Lily's notes were right, which meant all of it might be right, which meant she might be down that road. After dark, it's easier to find. The road wanted finding. He turned onto it anyway. The Ash Fork Road ran back into country that got wronger by the mile. The trees leaned closer. The air took on a smell, cold, mineral, wet stone and turned earth, a smell from under things. His phone had no signal, then no map, then, when he checked it at a stop, no clock. The numbers frozen at 9:47, the time he'd turned onto the road, and they did not change again the whole night, though the night went on for much longer than the minutes said. 2 miles in, his headlights found a car pulled off in the weeds. It was Lily's. He knew it before he was out of his own car. The dent in the rear quarter he'd been meaning to help her fix, the parking sticker from the college where she taught a night class. 8 months it had been missing, and the police had never found it because the police had never been on a road that wasn't there. It sat in the weeds with a skin of dust and pollen on it, tires flat, and when Cole opened the driver's door, the dome light came on, which it should not have been able to do after 8 months, and the car smelled of her shampoo faintly, and under it the cold mineral smell of the road, the 2 of them mixed. And that was the first moment Cole understood in his body, rather than his head, that the road had her a long time, and that the smell of her and the smell of it were becoming the same smell. On the passenger seat was her notebook, a second one, the one the police never had because she'd had it with her that night. Cole took it with hands that didn't feel like his. The last entry was dated 8 months ago. The handwriting started as hers, tight and excited, and Cole read it standing in the road with the dome light on. Found it. The road. It's everything they said. There's a place at the end of it. I can see lights. I'm going to walk down and then the handwriting changed. Not to someone else's. To hers, still, but slower. The letters getting rounder and simpler the way a child's are. The excitement draining out of them. The last lines written by a hand that was forgetting how it used to write. It is warm here. Cole would like it. I am not lost. I am kept. If you come, do not. The entry ended there. If you come, do not. Do not what? Cole stood on the road with his sister's second notebook in his hand and understood that she had known he would come, that she had written a warning to him, specifically him, by name 8 months ago, and had not been able to finish it because whatever the warning was, the thing that had her did not want it finished. He should have turned around at the car. He knew that even then. But I am not lost. I am kept. Meant she was alive, or something near enough to alive that she could still write his name. And a man does not turn around while his sister is writing his name from somewhere down a dark road. He left her car in the weeds and he drove on, deeper, toward the lights she'd seen. The lights. They came up slowly out of the dark. Not a town, not exactly. A scatter of lit windows in the trees, low buildings, a shape that might have been a church steeple, all of it soft and warm and yellow, The kind of light that says people, safety, come in from the cold. The road ran toward it, and Cole followed, and the closer he got, the more wrong the lights became, because they did not resolve. A town, seen from a distance, gets clearer as you approach. This got softer. The windows stayed warm and indistinct no matter how close he came, like a memory of a town, or a picture of one held underwater. And the smell of the road was very strong now, and the frozen clock in his dead phone still said 9:47. He parked at the edge of it and got out and walked, because the road had narrowed to a path, and the path ran between the buildings. And the buildings were the wrong kind of solid. They threw light, but not shadow. And when Cole put his hand on a door frame, the wood was warm as skin and gave slightly, and he took his hand back and did not touch anything else. There were people in the warm town. He saw them at the edges of the windows, in the mouths of doorways, at the ends of lanes, and not one of them was moving. They stood exactly where the light had caught them, held mid-gesture like mannequins arranged to suggest a living street. A man stopped with one foot off the ground, a woman frozen reaching for a door she would never open. A child paused in the act of turning its head and never finishing the turn. Real people, real faces, real hands, the pores and the stray hairs and the chapped lips of real people, but stopped, utterly, the way a photograph is stopped. And Cole understood after a moment of pure, crawling wrongness that they were the taken, everyone the road had ever kept. They stood in their warm, indistinct town in a light that never changed, at 9:47 forever, not suffering, that was the worst of it, not anything at all, faces slack and content and vacant, emptied of every want a person is made of, and posed here to make the place look inhabited. "It is warm here," Lily had written. "I am not lost. I am kept." He walked among them, saying her name, and not one head turned to the sound of it. Not one eye found him, and his own voice came back to him, thin and unwanted in that changeless light. And none of the frozen faces was Lily, until one of them was. She was standing in the doorway of a building that might have been the church, in the warm, changeless light, and she was Lily. His sister's face, his sister's height, the coat she'd been wearing in the last photo anyone took of her. Cole said her name, and she turned toward it, and unlike the others, she saw him. Her face did something the soft faces couldn't. It struggled up out of the contentment like a swimmer breaking water, and for 1 second it was all the way his sister's, recognition and joy. And then, hard on their heels, a terror so complete it stopped him where he stood. "Cole." Her voice was hers and slow and rounded, the voice of the last lines in the notebook. "You came. I told you not to. I couldn't finish it. It doesn't let you finish the part that saves somebody." Her eyes moved past him, quick, to the lanes and the doorways. "You have to listen fast. It knows you're here now. It's been letting me have my face back because it wants you calm. It won't let me keep it long." He crossed to her. Of course he crossed to her. 8 months of flyers and dead tip lines and the or the other growing as big as the hope. And here she was, warm and lit and kept, and everything in him that had made peace with her being dead tore open into a raw animal need to put her in the car and drive. "I'm getting you out. Right now. We're going... Don't touch me yet." It came out wrong. A half beat of it came out in a register too low for her throat, a second voice riding under the first, and Cole flinched back with his hands still raised. Lily's face crumpled with the effort of hauling the words back into her own mouth. I'm sorry, that wasn't... See, that's what I have to tell you, that's the thing. It's in here with me. It's been in here 8 months, and there's so much of it now, and so little of me, and I can't always tell." Her jaw worked. Something behind her eyes slid, the way a reflection slides on water when the surface is touched. And for a sickening instant, the face looking at him was arranged slightly wrong, the features a fraction too far apart, a mask worn by something that had studied the mask a long time, but had never had a face of its own. Then it was Lily again, gasping, gripping the doorframe. "It wants out, Cole. That's why the road let you find it. It's done with me. It used me up, and it wants the space back, and it can't walk out on its own. It needs a hand. A living hand. Somebody who wants me back so bad they'll take whatever comes out of this door and call it their sister." The warm light did not change, but Cole became aware, the way you become aware of a draft, of a wrongness at the edges of the town. He didn't see anything move. That was the horror of it. Nothing moved. Nothing ever moved here. But the frozen people were facing the church now. The man with his foot off the ground, the woman reaching for her door, the child caught mid-turn. All of them aimed at the doorway where Cole stood with his sister. Every slack face pointed his way, and he could not have said when it happened, because it did not happen. There was no motion to catch, only the fact of it, before and after, like the hands of a clock you never see move. And their eyes, all those emptied eyes, were open toward him and interested for the first time, and the smell of the road had thickened until it was the only thing he could breathe. Cold stone, deep ground, and under it, still, the specific warmth of his sister's hair. "Then I won't take it," Cole said, and his voice shook. "I'll take you, just you. I'll know the difference. You're my sister, I'll know." "No, you won't." And this was the worst thing she said, because she said it in her own voice, clear and steady and heartbroken, the most Lily she had been since he walked in. That's the trap. That's the whole trap. There's real me in here, and there's all of it, mixed, 8 months mixed, and I swear to you on our mother's life, I cannot tell you which one is talking right now. Maybe this is me, warning you. Maybe it's the thing, using the last of me to sound like a warning, so you'll be sure, so you'll reach out. Because it needs you sure, Cole. It can't use a hand that hesitates. Her tears spilled over, and they were the most human thing in that place, and he would spend his life unable to decide whether that made them true or made them bait. "I don't know what I am anymore. Neither will you. Not tonight, not in a year, not ever. That's what it sends you home with." Behind her, back in the dark of the church, something shifted its weight. Cole heard it. A wet, patient, settling sound. Large, close, waiting in the one place the warm light didn't reach. And he understood that the thing was not in Lily, so much as Lily was the near edge of it, the part it pushed out through the door to do the talking, and the rest of it went back and back into that dark, and it was very old, and it was almost ready. The light flickered, the first change in that changeless place since he'd arrived, and in the flicker, Lily's outline guttered like a candle. There and then not quite there, and when it steadied, her face had gone slack and content for a half second, the taken look, before she dragged herself back into it with a sob. "It's opening," she whispered. "Cole, it's opening the door. I can feel it deciding. You have to choose before it chooses for you, and if it chooses, you don't even get the not knowing, you just get taken." Her hand came up toward his, trembling, or reaching, or luring. And even that, the simplest thing, a sister reaching for her brother's hand, he could not read. "Decide. Take me across, or leave me in here forever, and either way spend the rest of your life the way I've spent these 8 months, wondering. You'll never stop. That's the price. It always gets what it's owed." Cole stood at the center of the only choice that had ever mattered. His sister's wet eyes, the dark thing breathing behind her, the whole silent town leaning in, and understood he'd been driven all this way, past every warning, precisely so he could make it blind. If he left her, he abandoned Lily, the real Lily, or the last thread of her, in a warm hell forever, on the chance that she wasn't really in there at all. If he took her, he might be carrying his sister home, or he might be reaching out and lifting the road's errand across the line with his own 2 hands, installing it in his life, at his mother's table, in the chair beside him, a thing wearing Lily's warmth, that he would never, ever be able to prove was wrong. The road hadn't forced him. That was its genius and its cruelty. It had simply taken away the one thing a person needs to choose right, the ability to know, and then opened the door and waited to see what love would do. Cole took his sister's hand. He walked her out of the warm town the way you'd lead someone from a fire, her hand in his, not looking back, saying her name under his breath like a rope he was climbing. The Taken watched them go and did not follow. The path became the road. The car was where he'd left it. He put her in the passenger seat and the dome light came on, and he did not look too closely at her face in it, because she'd told him not to look too close, and he'd caught himself wanting to, and being afraid to in equal measure, and hating himself for both. He drove them out. The lights fell away behind. The clock in his phone came unstuck at last. 9:47 became 9:48, then leapt to 3:12, catching up to a night that had gone on far longer than the numbers. And signal came back, and the map redrew itself, and the Ash Fork Road ran them back to the state road, and delivered them out onto it, and in the mirror, when Cole looked, the mouth of the road was gone, just tree line, unbroken, as if it had never been there, which, on every map anyone would ever check, it never had. Lily's car is still out there, in the weeds, on a road that isn't real. It was never found. It never will be. They came out at the county line station near dawn. The old man was still at the counter, or again at the counter, and when Cole came in for coffee with his sister waiting in the car, the old man looked out the window at the figure in the passenger seat for a long moment. And then he looked at Cole, and what was in his face was not relief. "You brought something out," he said, quietly. "I brought my sister out." The old man nodded slowly, and did not argue, and that was worse than any argument. "I hope so," he said. "I hope that's what you did. I'll tell you what I told her, one more time, and you'll do what she did with it." He poured the coffee and didn't take Cole's money. "You'll never be sure. That's what it sends you home with. Not a body, not a grave, not an ending. A person you love and a question you can't answer. For the rest of your life, at your own table. Some men would rather it had just kept her." He looked at Cole steadily. "Don't ask yourself, late at night, whether the woman in your house is your sister. That's the road, still working. 8 months from now, 10 years from now. It doesn't need to keep you if it can keep you wondering. Love her like she's Lily. It's the only way to win, and it isn't winning, and that's all there is." Cole took the coffee out to the car. Lily was in the passenger seat with the morning coming up gray and ordinary through the windshield, and she turned and smiled at him when he got in, and it was her smile. It was exactly her smile. And Cole smiled back and started the car and drove his sister home. She's home now. She laughs at his jokes. She remembers their childhood, the lake house, the dog they had, the name of their third-grade teacher, all of it. Every test he's ever quietly given her, she passes. Their mother wept for a week and calls it a miracle. Lily is warm and funny and here, and she sleeps with a lamp on now, which she never used to, and sometimes Cole comes into a room and finds her standing very still in the middle of it, content, facing a wall, in the warm light of the lamp, and when he says her name, she turns toward the sound of it, and smiles, and comes back to herself, and he tells himself she was only daydreaming. He will tell himself that for the rest of his life. The old man was right. It isn't winning. It's the only way to win. Cole got his sister back. He's almost sure of it. The wrong turn doesn't announce itself. It looks like a detour sign, or an empty tank, or a stranger standing calm in the dark with her hands folded. Sometimes it doesn't even look like a mistake. Sometimes you drive toward it with your eyes open, because someone you love is on the other side. It looks, every time, like the reasonable thing to do. And the reasonable thing is the trap. If you made it this far, do us a favor. Like the video and subscribe. It genuinely helps the channel. And remember, if you're ever out on a back road late, and the trees come in close, and some quiet part of you says, "Turn around," listen to it. It's the last honest thing that road will tell you.